Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an absolutely fascinating, high-stakes financial trade that on the surface just seems to defy all logic. It's a $1.75 million bet that isn't about a stock going to the moon, but just about its surviving. All right, let's get right into it. Why would you do this? Because the heart of this story isn't about getting rich quick. It's about a deep, deep conviction in a company's survival. It's a wild strategy designed to actually monetize fear itself. And the answer to this question, well, it reveals a huge divide between Wall Street institutions and a very dedicated community of online investors. So to really wrap our heads around this, you've got to understand just how weird this bet looks on paper. It's not about predicting the future with perfect accuracy. It's about creating a massive, massive margin for error. Okay, this number you see here, $30.10. This is the absolute key to the whole thing. It represents the effective price a group of retail investors could pay for a stock that was, at the time, trading for nearly 3 times that amount. We're talking a 65% discount. But pulling that off, yeah, that required taking on some enormous risk. So what made this all possible? Well, it wasn't some slow burn situation. This opportunity was created in a flash by a single event, an analyst report that sent absolute shockwaves through the market and created the perfect storm for this trade. And you have to remember the context here. It's so important. The company we're talking about, AST SpaceMobile, wasn't some sleepy, forgotten stock. It was one of the hottest things on the market. It was up over 250% in a year. Expectations were, sky high. And then, bam, everything changed overnight. A prominent analyst from Scotiabank dropped a major downgrade, basically saying the stock was worth less than half its current price. You can see it on the timeline. The market absolutely panicked. The stock plunged, and right there, the stage was set. And this slide, wow, it just perfectly captures the huge divide that opened up. You had Wall Street pros, the bears, looking at this company burning through cash, facing huge risks, and with a giant competitor in Starlink. But then you had this online community, the space mob, who saw something completely different. They saw a temporary mistake in the price based on a total misunderstanding of the tech. So you've got this massive fear and division in the market. How did these retail traders play it? Well, they didn't just buy the dip. Nope, their plan was way, way smarter than that. Yeah, this was not your grandpa's buy and hold strategy. Not at all. People who analyzed this trade called it a sophisticated derivatives play, a masterclass, really, in how retail investors could structure a trade to directly profit from the panic that downgrade created. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What they did was sell put options. The easiest way to think about this is like they were selling insurance on the stock. They collected a cool $250,000 in cash up front. In exchange, they made a promise. If the stock price falls below $35 by January 2028, they'll step in and buy $1.75 million worth of shares at that price. So here's where it gets really cool. Because they were paid that big chunk of cash up front, they don't actually lose a single penny until the stock price goes all the way down below $30.10. That premium they collected acts as a huge financial cushion, a margin of safety. Now, you might be asking, how could they get paid so much just to make this bet? Well, it all comes down to one little concept: implied volatility. The downgrade caused panic, which basically cranked the market's fear gauge up to 11. This made the insurance they were selling incredibly expensive, letting them get paid a handsome sum for taking on the risk. Okay, so this gets us to the real idea behind the trade. It wasn't just about the stock price. It was a fundamental bet on the company's very existence. Some people have even called this strategy viability arbitrage. The whole logic here really boils down to 3 pillars, and they're pretty brilliant. First, monetize the fear. Get paid by capitalizing on the market's panic. Second, buy time. Give the company 2 full years to get its act together and get past its most difficult cash-burning phase. And third, and this is clever, use the bearish analyst's own price target as a weird kind of safety net for their own bet. Now, of course, the big argument against all of this, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is Starlink. The big institutional fear is that SpaceX's massive satellite network is just going to crush ASTS before it even gets off the ground. But, and this is a huge but, the people making this bet say you're comparing apples and oranges. Their conviction isn't based on hype or marketing. It's a bet on superior physics creating a kind of defensive moat that competitors can't cross. Let's look at the tech, the tail of the tape. The key difference is the gigantic 2,400 square foot antenna on the AST satellites. That size is everything. It's what allows them to deliver real broadband speeds to a normal phone, even when you're indoors. And that leads to a different strategy too. They're trying to partner with carriers like AT&T, not compete with them like Starlink. So really, the entire $1.75 million bet comes down to this. Can the company survive the next 2 years without going bankrupt? That risk is very real. But the bulls are betting that its strategic partners and potential government funding simply won't let it fail. Okay, so we've looked at the setup, the company, the risks. Let's put it all together. What does the final scorecard, the risk versus reward of this incredibly complex trade, actually look like? And this chart, this is where you really see the power of this trade structure. Look at this. If the company succeeds and the stock is at $100, the trader makes $250,000. Great. But here's the real kicker. Even if the company just muddles through and the stock gets cut in half to $40, they still make the exact same $250,000 profit. The only way they lose is in a total catastrophic failure. So you see, at the end of the day, this was never really a bet on the stock soaring to the moon. It was a bet that the company itself, its patents, its technology, the actual hardware in orbit would just be worth something in 2 years, preventing a total collapse below that $30.10 break-even price. And that's why this whole thing is so fascinating. This wasn't just about numbers on a screen. This was a massive, multi-million-dollar bet on a single question. In a world that is so desperate for connection, are some technologies simply too important, too strategic to ever be allowed to fail?